Hello everyone, and welcome back to the continued reading of The Puzzle, A Gift from Spirit with Kelly Allen. And I'm going to be continuing the chapter Death and Moments of Clarity. And I'll jump in the middle of that chapter and we'll get going. My partner Lee and I enjoyed an amazing friendship with another couple, Gary and Carrie. We pretty much planned all of our weekends together. If we were going to see a movie, visiting our favorite piano bar in San Diego, spending a day at the beach, or anything else, we always did so together. Whether we were planning a grand party or event, or just planning to spend a day hanging out at one of our homes, you could count on the four of us being a part of it. One day Carrie shared news with us that we knew would potentially change everything. Carrie informed us that he had been diagnosed with AIDS. Although medical research had made some progress in the treatment of AIDS at the time, they still had a long way to go and people were still dying quite rapidly from the disease. Carrie did get on a cocktail combination of drugs, but it wasn't enough to prevent him from ultimately succumbing to the disease. Over the next year, it was extremely difficult to see Carrie deal with the toll this illness took on his body. As his health declined and the disease slowly overtook him, he never allowed us to see or hear signs or words of defeat, though the symptoms became gradually more and more apparent. One of the last memories I have of time spent with Carrie while he was able to get out and about with us was on an outing that Lee and I took with Carrie and Gary to see a movie. The movie we went to see was Jeffrey, a story that deals with the loss of a friend with AIDS. The movie, the message, and the experience were powerful. The four of us laughed and cried together. It wouldn't surprise me if Carrie hadn't preordained and orchestrated the entire outing, knowing that it would provide us with comfort and aid in dealing with his illness and with his eventual loss. Ultimately, Carrie would finally wind up in the hospital in his final days of living in this world. Lee and I were both blessed with very understanding employers that made it possible for us to spend every afternoon and evening in the hospital with Carrie for the last couple of weeks of his life. Right up until his very last breath, Carrie maintained the beautiful smile we all came to know and love. He never complained of his situation or of discomfort or pain. Most of all, he consistently maintained a sense of peace that was beyond comprehension to those of us looking in on him. Even in his last moments, he was teaching us through his amazingly beautiful spirit. On a cold January evening in 1996, Carrie finally breathed his last breath and returned to spirit. Of course, I didn't take this loss of my dear friend too well. Initially, after Carrie's passing, I began the grief process by turning inward in acknowledgement of ego and self-pity. I began immediately to identify myself as a person who had unjustly lost a close friend. I was mad that it happened to Carrie, and I was mad that it happened to me. I was angry at the world, and I was angry at God. I began trying to make sense of it all, but found myself stuck in a cycle of grief, frustration, and anger. When I finally put my focus outside of myself and onto Carrie's partner Gary, in offering a shoulder and an ear of comfort, I started to see my way through the pain and anger by being of service and love to another. By the time Carrie's funeral services were arranged, I had an incredible urge to write my thoughts and feelings. My intention was to provide this for Carrie's service, both for my benefit and in order to help the others grieving for his loss as well. Without overly critical thinking and overanalyzing, I wrote. I let the words come from my heart and I allowed them to flow without question. My preconceived beliefs had been temporarily suspended, and I just wrote. The following is what I now know Spirit inspired me to write. It was a very special day in the heavens, that September 7th morning. A beautiful soul was preparing for the descent to earth to fulfill a wonderful mission. Knowing what lay ahead of him was very exciting and at the same time troubling. His mission would be a very difficult one, but the souls he would touch and unite with for eternity would make the trip worthwhile. Carrie knew that once he passed through the veil, he would temporarily forget the beauty of being in the presence of his Heavenly Father and would be confined to his earthly body. But seeing the wonderful parents God had chosen for him, and the one with whom he would share the special bond of companionship caused the level of anticipation to rise in his heart. As Carrie walked through this life touching one soul after another, the impact he would have on each one seemed almost magical. His meek spirit and quiet ways somehow hid the powerful influence he would have on those he touched. It has been said by many that to meet Carrie once is to fall in love with him. His genuine smile and sincere laugh could warm even the coldest heart. Never a bad word could be said against him, nor could he be heard to slander another. If ever I knew a person who manifested the true spirit of Christ, Carrie did. Carrie completed his mission well. Those of us who have been brought together and taught a greater height of appreciation and love for one another will be eternally grateful for having the privilege of sharing in Carrie's life. And when we complete our mission on earth, we will race back through the veil, anticipating our reunion with him. We love you, Carrie, and we will miss you. Thank you for being the magnificent soul that you are. In my grief and in my desperate plea to heaven for understanding and comfort, I had touched the hem of the garment of spirit. I just hadn't realized it. I filed away a copy of what I had written for Carrie. It was a number of years later that I came across my eulogy for Carrie and read it again. When reading the words I had written, I became overwhelmed. Of course I cried, but then I began to finally take the message of comfort that Spirit had gifted me so long ago. Perhaps all of my reading, studying, and searching for answers had prepared my heart and mind to be more open and receptive, allowing me to release the dogma of younger fundamentalist beliefs. Perhaps the effect Carrie's death had on me, emotionally and spiritually, opened me up to be more receptive to the things of Spirit. Perhaps both are true. In any case, I know that Spirit was in fact speaking directly to and through me, and I, as a conduit of writing, had penned the very answers and received the very comfort that I sought. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the reading there, and I'll continue with this chapter in the next recording, and I'll share another story about another Carrie, my twin brother Carrie, who passed away. So I will catch you in the next recording, and thanks again for joining me.